Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
It is Wednesday, December 17th. This is NHL Wraparound. Vic Morren, along with Neil Smith. Shortly, we will be joined by the analyst for ESPN and Rogers Sportsnet, Ray Ferraro, who always has some great opinions. So we're going to look forward to that chat. But first, a little call to action that if you tune into us on either Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, please take a moment to give us a review. Let us know what you think about the show.
And if you're watching us on YouTube or even listening to us on YouTube, please hit subscribe. That's really important to us, that we get as many subscribers as possible so that we can get some sponsors and keep this show going.
And now on to the show. And with that, 3 things you need to pay attention to. Number 1, another member of the 1,000-point club, Leon Draisaitl of the Edmonton Oilers, becomes the first German-born player to reach that milestone. He had 4 assists in a 6-4 win for the Oilers at Pittsburgh. And, Neil, Gretz had Messier, McDavid had Draisaitl.
Yeah, and Gretz also had Yuri Curry as well. He had a lot of them, but McDavid and Draisaitl have been a great pair for a number of years now. And Draisaitl got that 1,000th point on his first assist of the game. It was a power play goal scored by Hyman, who was deep in the crease when he tipped it in. Great passing play, McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, and into the net. And everybody came onto the ice from the Edmonton bench and congratulated Leon. It was quite a thing. And then he went on to have 3 more assists after that. And don't forget, all against his goaltender of many years, Stuart Skinner.
And not to miss that point at all, that the 2 goaltenders that were traded for each other, Stu Skinner and Tristan Jarry, were in opposite nets for this game. And Jarry now 2-0 with the Oilers. Stopped 27 of 31 shots. Stu Skinner stopped 17 of 22. The last goal was an empty netter. But I did text you during the day and ask you if you were going to take the over in this game, because as we've seen with both of these goalies, the net minding wasn't stellar in this one.
No, it wasn't. But you've got to know that there had to be a lot of nerves. And also, I would think that the teams playing against their respective ex-goaltenders sort of knew where to shoot the puck, knew where the weaknesses are. When you practice with a guy every day for years, you get to know. But then again, the goaltenders get to know where you're going to shoot as well. But really something I'd never seen before. 2 goalies traded for each other and immediately have to play against each other on opposite ends of the rink. And particularly when you think about it, this was traded between conferences. So the likelihood of an Edmonton-Pittsburgh game coming up right on the heels of that trade was very minuscule, and yet it happened and made for good theater.
Certainly did. Also of note in that game, Sidney Crosby had an assist. He is now 1 point behind Mario Lemieux for the Penguins' all-time franchise record in points. Lemieux currently holding it, at least for the short term, with 1,723 points. Item number 2, the top 3 scorers in the National Hockey League all deliver big time on Tuesday. Nathan MacKinnon, 2 goals and an assist, in a 5-3 win for the Avalanche in Seattle, all those points coming in the third period. MacKinnon up to 58 points on the season. And the Avalanche, 24-2-7. They continue to roll.
Unbelievable. Really an incredible start to the season for the Colorado Avalanche. And just keep rolling night after night. And you can see that MacKinnon is possessed. I mean, he wants to win, and he's a huge horse out there on the ice that some nights looks unstoppable. And then you get Cale Makar coming in from the back end, and you've got a perfect combination, perfect winning combination when you have a defenseman as dynamic as Makar and a center iceman as strong and big and powerful and skilled as McKinnon.
We've already mentioned Connor McDavid just a moment ago. He is second in the league in scoring. He had 2 goals and 2 assists in that win in Pittsburgh. He's at 56 points and is right behind McKinnon. And then third, Macklin Celebrini. 2 goals, 2 assists in the Sharks' 6-3 win over the Calgary Flames on Tuesday. Celebrini's up to 51 points. The Sharks are second in the wild card, and this player is not only making a case for the Canadian Olympic team, but if this club goes to the playoffs, he's going to get strong consideration for MVP.
He will get some consideration for that for sure. I mean, I think that at this point, you've got to say McKinnon and McDavid and a couple others are the front lead dogs, but certainly Macklin Celebrini is just doing wonders for that franchise in San Jose as he has lifted them out of the bottom of the lake and put them up on the surface. They're no longer bottom feeders. They're a tough out every night.
And check out one of his goals because he did a remarkable spinorama, receiving a pass and then getting his goal against Dustin Wolf. So just a spectacular player, and hockey alive and well in the Bay Area again.
That's for sure. And that's good to see because the Bay Area and San Jose in particular, they need to be better in order to keep that fan base coming. It's a great fan base in San Jose, but it's a smaller fan base. It's not a huge area. So, you know what? Good for them.
But not as good for the fan base in Buffalo, who see yet another turnover in the front office. Jarmo Kekalainen becomes the first general manager to be hired by the Sabres with previous experience in Scotty Bowman. In 1979, Bowman was previously a general manager for the St. Louis Blues from 68 through 71. Kekalainen on Monday replacing Kevin Adams. And when you look at the list of GMs since Bowman, Jerry Meehan, John Muckler, Darcy Regier, Tim Murray, Jason Botterill, and Adams, all coming in with no experience. And this is almost indicative of what the recent history of this entire franchise is.
Yeah, and you know, Darcy Regier, I just want to say, did a real good job for the Buffalo Sabres during his long term there. He really did. Jarmo Kekalainen went to the Buffalo Sabres a few months ago as a advisor to the general manager. It was quickly rumored that he might take over at some point, and sure enough, he has. So he's got experience. Yes, his experience isn't winning experience by any stretch of the imagination, having run the Columbus Blue Jackets, albeit they swept the Tampa Bay Lightning with John Tortorella at the helm back then. But certainly he'll have his hands full in Buffalo. If he thought that Columbus was a mess, he ain't seen nothing yet.
Kekalainen served 11 years with Columbus and comes in and says, I want this team to really start to have character. And, you know, to look at this, to hear the statement, and yes, it's a fresh start for him. Perhaps it's a fresh start in some ways for the Sabres. But you wonder if they're looking for character now, what's been going on for the last 14 years?
You know, all these cliche statements are BS. It's like, what do you think we've been trying to get here? And does that mean the guys we have don't have character? Does that mean the captain, Dahlin, doesn't have character? Does that mean Tage Thompson doesn't have character? Yeah. Alex Tuck from Western New York himself doesn't have character. I mean, they do have a lot of character in Buffalo. Hockey players have character. It's leadership that they need. They need leadership. They need it to be organized. They need to understand why things are going on the way they're going on and not just be a circus. And that's what Buffalo has been for quite a while. I'm not blaming Lindy Ruff by any stretch, and I'm not even blaming Kevin Adams. But everything starts at the very, very top. And until that's straightened out, it's going to be hard to straighten out anything underneath.
And that's going to be part of our discussion with Ray Ferraro coming up. But for now, those are three things you need to pay attention to. Now, let's welcome in ESPN and Sportsnet's Ray Ferraro.
Well, now it's an absolute pleasure to bring on to NHL Wraparound Ray Ferraro, who's been doing TV for about as long as he was playing on the ice, it seems like. And I know you make fun of yourself when you do TV, like as if you're an old guy and all this stuff, but it seems like just yesterday that you were playing junior hockey. So Ray, welcome to our show, and thanks for coming on and doing this with me and Vic.
Yeah, you bet, Neil. Good to see you guys. It's funny how life goes fast, and everybody tells you it does. And of course, when you're 25 and 35, it doesn't. And, you're in the grind and thinking about the future and all that stuff. Now I take a look back and, I played my first NHL game in December of 1984, and I retired in May of 2002. And I thought I was going to take a year to kind of, try and land my feet somewhere. Try and figure out what the next step was. I always thought I would get into coaching. And so I retired in May, and Craig Simpson was leaving Sportsnet at the time to go and coach with the Oilers. And there was a open spot, and somehow somebody got in touch with me. Would you like to audition for it? And I auditioned for the color job. I'd done one game of color analysis at that point, and I got the job. And so I retired in May of 2002, and I started broadcasting in October of 2002. And I've been lucky enough to do it ever since. I mean, I love it, man. It's the reason why you guys do this, right? You love the game. It's fun to be around the game. It's fun to see people. I love going to the rink still. And there'll be a time probably where I'm like, I think I'm done, but it's certainly not today.
Well, that's a wonderful thing to be able to go right from playing and within the same year find your next calling.
Yeah, lucky.
We're very lucky, because a lot of guys are out there still 20 years later trying to find their calling after having played, and they keep missing the locker room so bad. I know what you mean about being around the rinks, because I go to all the Islander games for UBS, and I just love going. And in fact, even on the nights when they tell me you don't need to go, if you don't, I still go, because I got to be there. I can't. I told Vic, it's like a coach saying, "Oh, you can stay home tonight. You don't have to come." You're like, "No, I'm on the team. I've got to come. I have to be there."
Yeah, I look at guys that have been able to transition completely out of the game, and it seems strange to me. Not like maybe I didn't have a skill set that applied itself to anything else, but I mean, I've been in the rinks, like I've been in a rink since 1970.
Yeah.
And in various stages of my life. And so my whole life is the rhythm of the season. It is seeing people in the locker room. There's nothing that cracks me up more now than I walk into a press room somewhere and I run into Tony Herkis, for example, who I played with a little bit in Atlanta. And you have like 5 or 10 minute conversation. You get a few giggles out of it. You remember some things. You talk about the game that might be going on that night. And in our house, it's a very unique house. I mean, my wife is Cami Granato, for those that might not know. And so her life has been built around the season and the schedule. And now she's working with the Canucks, and it's the season. It's I will say this, and Neil, you were in management forever. People think they have an idea what managers and assistant managers do. They have no idea. They have none. I thought I knew, and then Cami got hired in Vancouver, and the workload, you're not digging a ditch, but it's relentless. Yeah. You complete the task, and there's 4 more tasks on the desk, and you finish those 4 and there's 5 more.
Yeah.
It's like you don't, when our family gets to the middle of July, like when development camps are over, that's like the time that our family can go on vacation somewhere.
Yeah.
Because, and then you really only got until like the middle of August, and then, man, you're right back into, so that's been quite an education for me. I think I like the broadcasting schedule a lot better.
We might add that Ray Ferraro is the host of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, which you got to take a listen to if you want to get enlightened, unlike NHL Wraparound. No, just kidding. But no, you got to take a listen. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Darren Drager and I, we're like 6 years into it, and we really have a lot of fun doing it. Dregs is I've known Dregs since I started in TV. Well, actually before that. And, he was reporting and I was still playing. And, I don't know. It's really a neat thing. I can offer opinion on what I see, and Dregs is so connected in through the league that, we discuss the things that either may happen or have happened that he's got a different angle on than I ever would.
Yeah, he is really wired in. If you want to hear things you probably won't hear anywhere else, try Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. So, Ray, let's get into the Vancouver situation. I know you live there. You follow them, obviously, with your wife working there. And maybe you could take us through something that I'm curious at. And I'm a million miles away from Vancouver, so I don't claim to be an expert on the Vancouver Canucks other than watching them on TV. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the club was totally different than it is today. And 2 years ago, they ended in first place. A hell of a year. Rick Tocchet was the head coach. He won Coach of the Year. Quinn Hughes won the Norris Trophy as the best defenseman in the league. Miller had 103 points. Pettersson had 89 points. I mean, the team was just clicking. That funny name of Thatcher Demko was becoming known around the league because he was such a good up-and-coming goalie before all the injury problems. And Brock Besser had 40 goals. And so what, I guess I just want to say, what happened? Where did it go? How did it unravel?
Well, I would say one thing that I've certainly learned more as I've, gotten older in the, around the game is it's never one thing. I think in the media and the fans for sure, would like to point at a specific event and say that was it. That was the turning point. Because, a year before, they had Bo Horvat too. And so, Horvat wanted, I hate quoting numbers because it might be wrong, but the contract Bo signed in New York was 8 times 8. 8 years, $8 million.
Yeah.
And at the time, the cap was significantly lower than it is now. Mm-hmm. And the Canucks knew they were going to run into a problem. And so the decision was made that, they traded Horvat. They got Ratu and a first rounder. They traded the first rounder to Detroit for Filip Hronek, who is a really, really good player, competitive guy. He comes in. They are, Miller is, he's playing at a good level. Not the level he would reach the next year, the 100 points you're talking about. Yep. Rick Tocchet comes in to replace Bruce Boudreau, and there becomes more structure to the game. Like, I'm sure you guys are in the East, you see the Flyers play a lot. Yep. Talk's game is a very structured game, and the Canucks played it very well. They had Thatcher Demko playing at an exceptional level. Quinn wins, is on his way to winning the Norris. He's a tremendous player. Like, there was a momentum to it all. And then the next year, so they get to the second round, they lose in the 7th game against Edmonton 3-2. But in that playoff run, Demko had gotten hurt. Casey DeSmith was the backup. He got hurt. And so they had Artur Shilovs as their goaltender. And there becomes this myth around things like Shilovs did an amazing job. Man, he'd never played in the NHL, really, 1 or 2 games. His save percentage was about .880, and they went to the second round in Game 7. It's not like they threw the team on his back and he carried them. They were a gritty, physical, defensive-focused team, and their power play was really great. They get into the offseason, and this is where I'm talking about it's not one thing. So Demko's not healthy. They realize that, and as it goes through the summer, they realize, wait a minute, he's not going to be healthy. He's not going to be ready for camp. Dakota Joshua gets diagnosed with testicular cancer. And Dakota was a tremendously effective player on a line with Teddy Bluger and Connor Garland in the year they went to the conference or the second round. So Dakota's out. Fortunately, he's healthy and back playing in Toronto now, but it took him almost 3/4 of the year to get past. You can only imagine the emotional stuff to go along with the physical stuff. Hronek missed a month. Pettersson had tendonitis in his knee and was a shadow of the player that he was the year before. This feud starts or disagreement or whatever. I don't know. Unless you're in the room, you know, Neil. Unless you're in the room, you don't really know. Miller and Pettersson don't get along. Miller went on a 10-game hiatus, personal leave.
Yeah.
In the midst of all of this, now you've got Kevin Lankinen in goal, who was having a tremendous year. They don't have Demko. They don't have Joshua. Hronek's hurt. Pettersson's not healthy. Miller's not playing anywhere near to his capabilities. Quinn Hughes ends up with 2 or 3 injuries that start to linger. And all of a sudden, you're not even the same team anymore. So it was almost like death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. So they decide they trade Miller. They kind of shift the path, with him gone. Hedl gets hurt. One of the players, Philip Hedl, comes from the Rangers. And so now the scramble's on. And, when you make one move, if it doesn't work, now you've got to make another move to make the team better, but also to correspond to the move that didn't work. And pretty soon you do that 2 or 3 times and the ground shifts. And so you get to where they are now. And, Quinn Hughes had told them he wasn't going to re-sign. So they make the deal with Minnesota. The team looks nothing like it did 18 months ago. But what they have done, out of necessity, I would say, but they've charted a new path. And this is a team that is going to be incredibly young. They make the trade. They get Bouillon, who's 20, Ogren, who's 21, and Rossi's 23, I believe. And they get a first-round pick this year. They're likely going to move a couple of players still, and they'll end up with more draft picks. So the course is now different. It feels lighter, but the team's not as good as when Quinn was here and when JT Miller was playing at the top of his game and Brock Besser scored 40 goals. But there is a thing, and I know it because I played it, and that is I was not a 40-goal scorer, but I scored 40 goals twice.
Yep.
And, JT Miller's probably not a 100-point player, but he's a really good player. But if you need him to get 100 points for your team to be what they were, you're probably going to be disappointed, right? Brock Besser's probably closer to a 27 to 30 goal scorer, not a 40 goal scorer. So if you think you're going to get 40, you're going to be disappointed. If you were looking for 25 to 27 goals from me, you're probably going to be happy. If you were looking for 40, you're probably going to be disappointed. And so that leads Vancouver to where they are now. They've got a really pretty strong prospect pool. They've got a healthy Demko right now. And, he's won both games or won the last 2 games. He's been terrific. And if he's healthy, that changes the equation almost instantly. They've got a young goaltender, Medvedev, they drafted last year that they view as a franchise type goaltender. What are they? They're a team that nobody likes to say rebuilding, right? Nobody's rebuilding anymore, but they're retooling, refurbishing, rehabbing, whatever they're doing. But they're young and you can see the direction they're headed in. And that's the goal right now for Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford as they build this.
You living out there in Vancouver, and we talk about fishbowl media, like in New York and in Toronto. And Vancouver is also one of those cities where you just happen to hear the media get brought up an awful lot when there's turmoil with the team. And we had heard regarding Hughes that some of this was starting to seep into the room as well.
Sure. Yeah, it had for sure. I mean, you could just watch Quinn play. And I know Quinn a little bit. He's a phenomenal kid. He really, really is a special young man. He really is. And Minnesota is going to love him. There's no chance they're not. But you could see in his demeanor and his play, he always looked heavy, like the weight of the world was on him. And now he's never going to be a demonstrative guy. That's not his thing. He's not Jack, his brother. Jack loves that stuff.
Yep.
Quinn's far more reserved. So it was a mess, and it had to happen. And I think they thought that if they had gotten off to a good start, that, maybe the course could be a little different.
Right.
But they don't get out of training camp. Guys, they had 7 regulars out of the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's got a chance in that? Nobody. And so it started okay, and then it dove off. I mean, they were thin at center to begin with. And in the same game, they lost Teddy Bluger and Philip Hedl. And so now you've got Elias Pettersson and 3 guys that are just inching their way into the NHL. Yeah. Like that, it's the wrong position for that. And it led to this deal. And there were a whole bunch of deals talked about. I don't know, like Neil, I don't know how you dealt with it when you're in the media, but half the stuff reported isn't right. You can't go out and refute everything.
Right.
Yet once it gets reported somewhere, it gets picked up by 8 other outlets.
Yeah.
Everybody's just doing their job. But what was instructive to me, and I think probably should be for other people, is, the one team that nobody talked about Quinn Hughes going to was Minnesota. So with all the digging around and people, I hear this and I hear this, there's an old line, you know what I hear? Or you know what I heard? Goats. Because you just don't know. Like, unless you're sitting in the room, you had the phone in your hand, you know what's going on. Yeah. The people that are talking about it on the periphery, they might have heard from somebody's agent or somebody's agent's friend or a player's buddy. And pretty soon that becomes the story. And look, I don't, there's no fault in it. It's just believing that what you hear is actually going on is fool's gold, because the people that really know, they're not telling anybody else. They're just trying to get the car across the finish line.
Right.
Well, let's move this trade over to the Minnesota side. And club is 3-0 since the trade, 2-0 with Quinn Hughes in the lineup. Yep. How legitimate, in your opinion, are the Wild right now? I mean, they are 17-3-2 since November 1st. They got off to that 3-6-3 start. This club under John Hines has certainly turned itself around. But when you put them up against the Vegases and the Colorados and the Dallas Stars, where do you see them measuring up long-term here?
Well, their timing is terrible, right? Like you happen to be in a division where 3 of the top 5 teams in the league, in my opinion, all sit. And so I did Colorado the other night. They got Florida on a back-to-back. And so Florida didn't have a chance, right? Yeah. Florida's got enough injuries that it's tough enough as it is to the top end of their lineup. But it looked like Florida was in tennis shoes and Colorado just skated by. It was so obvious how good Colorado is. And given the schedule and given their injuries, and Florida wasn't going to keep up to them that night. So I'm thinking about your Billy Guerin. You've got a good team, right? So before the trade, there were 14-3-2, right? This is a good team. Yeah. They've got excellent goaltending. John Hines is a terrific coach. He's one of those guys, when I get to talk to him, I always come away impressed. He's just got a way about him that I'm like, well, man, I like that. I liked what he's focusing on. So you can either stick your head in the sand and go, man, we're in the toughest division and it's going to be really hard to get out, or you can fight. And that's what Billy Guerin that's what they're doing. Like, I don't think Minnesota by a long shot is finished here. Mm-hmm. I look at their team and they have an exceptional top end of the roster. From the midpoint down, it gets a little thin. Yeah. Now, if Yurov can be a player for them, if Tarasenko can find a little bit of third line magic, if Hartman can stay engaged and healthy to the game, like, these are all really good players that can help Minnesota in the bottom end of their lineup. I think that's the area that they probably need to improve if they are. Their defense is excellent. Quinn is a game changer. He really is. They have two goalies that they trust.
Yep.
And that they probably don't fear putting either one of the guys in the net. They've got a tough road though. Doesn't anybody? Like, the difference between the teams now is so minute. Okay, put it this way. 2 years ago, Boston got 132 points and they were out in the first round. What Colorado's doing here in December is awesome, but it doesn't matter in April.
That's right.
And so much is going to matter, like health, who can make the right deal at the right time. I would say what I do like about what Billy just did is you made your major deal in December.
Yeah.
I don't think very often the deals that sound the biggest in March pay the biggest dividends.
Yeah.
Neil, when you guys won the cup, right? You made like a mitt full of deals at the deadline, but you were target shopping.
Right.
You weren't trying to change the team. I mean, you did in an essence because you target shopped the players that you did. You became a harder, more playoff ready team. And that's what Bill can do. That's what Colorado's going to do. They don't have to remake the team.
Right. Well, I actually, on that point, before I move on, Ray, I actually studied the deadlines going way back, deadline deals. And there's only one that I could find where the team at the deadline acquired a superstar and won the cup. Only one. So every other year that somebody out there got the big fish, they didn't end up winning the cup. And that one,
who was the one?
Rob Blake going to Colorado.
Yeah.
Right. What's funny? Everybody remembers Ray Bourque, but they didn't win the year Ray went.
Right. No, they didn't.
They went. I'm going to tell you a funny story about, so Blakey ends up in, I played with in LA. He ends up in Colorado and, we're playing them. I'm in Atlanta. So, I mean, it is miles from where we are to where Colorado is. And so we had this play and, that went up the ice, and somehow Blakey and Ray Bourque ended up on the same side of the ice, and we got a breakaway. And I think the goalie stopped it. Anyway, there was a whistle and they were together. And I said, how do you two dummies fall for that? Like, they were two Hall of Famers, right? And we all had a laugh because it was like, they ended up on the same side of the ice. They'd never played together. And so as it turned out, Blakey ended up winning the cup there that year. And yeah, that was a pretty damn good team too, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And you're absolutely right about Bill Guerin getting Quinn Hughes at the right time of year, because I've always said if you bring in a big cog, they need time for all the other cogs to adjust their role, because whoever was playing the point on the power play is going to be pissed off going to the rink the next day because he's not going to be there because Quinn Hughes is going to be there. And whoever was on the second power play now isn't even on the power play. And that guy that he rides to the rink with in the car with him, he's pissed off too because they're buddies and he's pissed off for him. So it just, Ray, better than I do, I know that it trickles down from guy to guy when that stuff happens. And
even the power play, Neil, is interesting because when Quinn has the puck, like I don't think he'll carry it as much in Minnesota as he did in Vancouver. I think he had gotten to the point where he's like, look, I got to carry it all the time. He had the puck on his stick 4 minutes a game, which is like a minute and a half more than anybody else in the league. But when Quinn gets the puck in the zone and they've got Zuccarello and Kaprizov and Boldy and Eriksson X in front of the net, there's a lot of guys that can do damage with the puck. Quinn will learn. I don't know if learn's the right word. He'll adjust knowing that he doesn't need to have the puck as much. And he's such a good passer, but he'll distribute it. But when he takes off down the boards and the penalty killer is going at him and he stops and spins back the other way, and now the penalty killer's 15 feet away, all those other guys have to find the ice. They have to find where's the right place to be. And I'm telling you, the first couple weeks, it might not be as smooth as you think, because they're very, very talented people who have been running things one way. And now you got a new band leader, and everybody's got to get used to the band leader.
Yeah. And we talk about band leaders. Let's go to another peculiar situation. For me, at least, maybe you can help explain this one. You sure did a good job on Vancouver. Stuart Skinner the Edmonton native gets traded from the Oilers to Pittsburgh for Tristan Jarry. I don't understand what Stan Bowman's doing. I'm sorry, I don't. You take on a bigger contract with Jarry. You let go of a local kid that had got you to the finals 2 years in a row. Can you explain that to you? Because I can't.
Well, I can, because of what Stan said after, which was sometimes you just have to make a change. And so I think that was the overriding thought, because the numbers are no different. Yeah. They're within a percentage point here or there. Jarry has not had the playoff success that Skinner has. To make that deal, they had to offload Brett Kulak, who I think is a pretty good third pair defenseman. Now they brought in Spencer Stastny from Nashville in a different deal. Really great skater. Probably a younger Kulak, I guess. It cost them 2 draft picks to make those moves as well, to make everybody happy. I don't know if they're better or not. I do know for some reason Edmonton can never, in the last 3 years, get out of the gate. They just can't. I don't get it, but they just can't. And now they're starting to roll a little bit. Are they any better? I really don't know. Yeah. I mean, they got to game 7 2 years ago. They got to game 6 last year. Are they a better team with Jarry and Stastny than they were with Skinner and Kulak? Right? And I think the answer is probably not, but I don't know that they're worse. I kind of think it's just like shuffling deck chairs around. Yeah. And you hope that Edmonton is a fresh enough start for Jarry, so he plays like he did a year and a half ago. But there's 2 things. We do a lot of Pittsburgh games with ESPN, so I've seen Jarry play quite frequently. He has the bugaboo of giving up a softie. Yeah. Right? Like that does stick with him a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on. The second is last March, he was in the American League. Yeah. And, did he rebuild his game enough to solidify himself? Now, I thought when he came back, he looked like a calmer guy. He just looked calmer in the net. I don't know him away from the rink. He seems like a really nice guy. He's always pretty chatty. But how does that translate into the pressure of the playoffs? And, in their division, they're going to fight with the same couple of teams again. Yeah. And, I really don't know. I don't know how he'll respond to the pressure of a team that thinks they're a Stanley Cup contender as opposed to one that kind of hopes they are. Right. And you can talk to any goalie and they'll all tell you the same. When you're the guy on that team, it's a different animal.
I want to move over right now to a couple of unknown quantities, if you will, in New York. And I was going to actually title this part of the show, "What the hell's going on in New York?" And I want to look at 2 teams, the Rangers and the Sabres. And we're going to start with Buffalo, because earlier in our show, Neil and I had mentioned that with Jarmo Kekalainen taking over for Kevin Adams, he is the first GM since Scotty Bowman was hired in 1979 by the Sabres to have any prior experience, Kekalainen having been GM of Columbus for 11 years. But what is your take on that entire situation there? Because for the last 14 seasons, it just feels like it's ground zero year after year after year.
I read that and I was like, that just can't be, right? Like that can't be. And except it is. And, Darcy Regier was the GM there and he had been the assistant in New York for a little bit, I don't know how many years, but, Darcy was, I mean, isn't that really the progression from an assistant to a GM at some point? But you'd think after a while that you would have put an experienced hand in the GM spot like that would have been my thought. However, I'm a few $1 billion short owning a team. Inexperience in that position year after year when you're struggling to make a headway, inexperience doesn't seem to be the way to go. Yeah. In my mind, the biggest problem in Buffalo is that for years, they've had talented players, but no team. They have, when you used to go into Buffalo, when Lindy Ruff was the coach the first time and Michael Pekka was there and, that group of players, Ryan Miller was in goal, you would go in there and you would know that you were in for it. Yeah. Like that you were, if you didn't come to stick your nose in the game, they were going to punch it and then they were going to win. And if that's your identity, then you have to draft and play to that identity. If it's not, then you have to draft and play to whatever your identity is. And they don't have one. They have 35 forwards that are my size that you can't win in the game anymore like that. You just can't. They went and signed a bunch of guys to long-term 7-year contracts that had virtually no experience in the league, nor any real need to sign them to that length. And so you've lost a hunger. You've lost, you're a 21-year-old kid. You got a 7-year deal for $40 million. You're like, I'm here, right? Where's the inspiration? When you lose year after year, that gets eroded away. The last bit of fight that you have, you think you're given what you have. You're not. You're just not. And it's because you've just been mentally worn away. I think Jarmo's experience will give him certainly a clarity about what he wants to get done. I can't imagine there's not going to be a lot of change. I think there will be. I think you'll see a more defined way that the Sabres will accumulate players and try to build some culture, structure, whatever the buzzword is you want. But if you look at the Buffalo Sabres, what would you say their identity is? The answer is you don't know.
Do we have any idea what the identity is in the Big Apple with the Rangers? Because this is a club that on Tuesday, they get a shutout for the 7th time this season, 6th at home. They've already played 35 games. They're 6th in the wild card. So that GP column is getting problematic really quickly for them. But on top of everything else, you had the Zibanejad thing on Monday where he misses a meeting. He's scratched against his former teammate, Chris Kreider. The power play is a complete mess without Adam Fox there. They're going with 5 forwards. And there seems to be a lot of stuff that Mike Sullivan is just throwing against the wall, and not a lot of it sticking right now.
Well, I watched the game last night. I don't know if you guys saw, they lost to Vancouver, and they don't have a pace to them. There was a stretch of the game where I thought they were really good. Yeah. But they don't have a pace to their game. Miller and Zibanejad are not fast. Panarin is not a fast player.
Right.
So that's half your top six. So I think that's, that's problematic. But that doesn't mean they can't play fast. They miss Fox, but without Fox, so even if you put Adam Fox on that blue line, where does the puck move from? Like where's the start of the attack? If it's not on Fox's stick, you have a pretty pedestrian group of puck movers. Like you would say they're more defenders than puck movers. And in the game today, if you can't move the puck from the back to the front, your attack's going to get smothered. The guys, I always thought when the rules changed, back in, 04 or something, and there's going to be less restriction and less obstruction and all that, I thought, wow, this is going to really open up the offense. But what I didn't realize was the speed of the game was a hindrance to offense because the guys backtrack faster. They take away space quicker. They're bigger. The bigger guys can skate. I loved playing against bigger guys because they couldn't skate the way that they can now.
Yeah.
So now you have 6'2" and 6'3" guys and they fly. I don't know if you guys have seen Anaheim yet live. Holy, they're monsters and they're fast. And so if you're a little bit slower, or you don't play fast or you don't move the puck, how do you compete against that?
And New York also looks like they have 9 bottom 6 forwards on their team.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's the other part. And again, Neil would probably be the best reference of this, is that if the media can identify a problem, probably the managers have noticed it. Like I would think that they've probably noticed. And so in Vancouver forever, it was like they need a number 2 center. Oh, really? Of course they do. Now, as my friend Ken Holland will say, there is no hockey player store. I can't go buy a number 2 center. The guys that have number 2 centers, they're not giving them to me.
Yeah.
So Neil, I would assume you ran into this in your work, is that I can see the problem.
Yeah.
There isn't an answer. Like I can't make up the answer. And so it looks like they're sitting on their hands when I think the biggest problem would be if you can't identify what direction you're going. If you try to do 2 things at the same time, and I think it's the same in hockey or in life, if you're trying to do 2 things at the same time, you fail. You're driving, you're reading, you're not paying attention, you're fiddling with the radio, whatever. If you're building a team and you want to be a contender, but you want to get younger, how are you doing that? You can't. You just can't. And so they're talking, they've got Gabe Perreault and a couple other young guys that they're excited about, but you don't have enough of them. And the problem is you've traded away enough draft picks trying to be the other team, the competitive team.
Yeah.
So doing 2 things at once I get why teams try to do it. I do, because people like their jobs and they want to stay there, but it's almost next to impossible, I think, to do both.
I think the Rangers, to answer your question, Ray, are one of these teams that you look at them and you can't see what their strategy is. You just can't find a strategy. It's like haphazardly, emotionally doing things at the moment because you're pissed off about something. And so you make a move and you'll never win doing it that way, right? You've got to stick to your strategy no matter whether you like it. If you're in a bad mood, good mood, you've got to stay with your strategy in order to be successful in building the team.
And when you don't have it, it must be incredibly hard to be patient. To go but this is the road we're on. You can't be jumping from road to road.
No,
you never. I use the example of when you get in your car and you're going somewhere you don't know, but you say, you know what, I'm going to not use the navigation. you don't ever get there. You need a map. You need a navigation to follow. Yeah. And I would say there's a number of teams that get into the panic of it, where they're well aware that things aren't going well. And they're like, oh boy, I got to fix this. and it's really hard to fix.
Speaking of it, not having a GPS system, let's go to my hometown in Toronto and talk about the Maple Leafs and talk about what the hell is going on there, because the one thing that's changed is Mitch Marner's gone, and that's what everybody can notice that. I mean, there's a lot of people at the CNIB that can see that Marner's gone. And only Ray and I would understand what the CNIB is. But
you betcha. It's Canadian, Vic. It's Canadian.
Yeah.
But they finally stole a game Tuesday with Chicago, having to come back from a 2-0 deficit, get 3 goals in the third period, win the game. I'm sure they're planning the parade in Toronto. But I mean, why? From your view, I'm not asking you why, like as if you're in the room, but from your view, why are the Leafs such an enigma this year? Because they're a 100-point team, and they fire Shanny. I still don't know why, but they fire Shanahan, and they got Pelly in there now, and he seems to think he knows hockey, which is frightening. And so
yeah, it's see, okay. So I would say, again, I've never been a manager, but this drives me wild when I hear, it's a copycat league. We have to play, or we have to build our team to beat team X.
Yeah.
I think that's nuts. I think it's nonsense. And the reason I do is because if you're worried about the one team, and in Toronto's case, it was Florida,
yeah,
you build your team in a certain way. But the problem is the other 14 teams in the conference, they're trying really hard too. So now you might be better suited to beat one team. So what's Toronto done? They lost Marner. They've gotten bigger, which was one of their intentions. Unfortunately, they got slower and they got less skilled. So in my mind, they're just not as good. Like the results are what you realistically could expect. They're just not as good a team. The part I don't get for them is their lack of engagement longer term in the game, in a game.
Yeah.
They kind of like wander in and out of the game. And I don't understand why that's happened. I don't know if you saw the highlights last night. Craig Berube looked like he was going to flip the bench over.
Oh yeah.
And like when he's like, we got one effing shot. And, the Blackhawks aren't known as a shutdown team, right? And like they didn't play. They did not play. And then they get the win today. But I do think they know they're not fooling anybody, including themselves. I think they realize there is a problem. Again, they get back to like, how do you fix it? They need a winger to play with Auston Matthews. Who's that? Like, where are you finding him? You got Tavares and Nylander. You're short top 6 guys in a couple of lines. Like, you're just not quite as good. And that's the problem. And
Ray, a player that could have played certainly in your era and would play and plays, I think, the way that we all appreciated players from your era is John Tavares. I think he's an amazing, and I don't know John. I just watch him and I know his work ethic and his dedication to the game and to making his game better. And I don't know about Auston Matthews. I don't see that in Auston Matthews, who's their best player, who there was a great graphic up in the game last night talking about how Auston Matthews is actually slower than he was 2 years ago, speed-wise. And I don't go much for all these new analytics, but I thought that was very interesting. And, they took the C off of Tavares, and that was Brendan Shanahan in that group, and they gave it to Matthews. And we've seen that happen before. The new younger guy, John's contract's expiring. Why don't we give the team over to Auston? It's the right progression and this and that. But it seems to me since he got the C, he's not nearly as good as he was. And I may be wrong in saying that the C has nothing to do with it, but he is not that unbelievable player that he was a couple of seasons ago.
Well, I mean, there was when he was scoring 60 goals, that you could kind of discuss, would you rather have him or McDavid? And now it's like, would you rather have, I saw somebody do this. Would you rather have him or Dylan Larkin?
Yeah.
Right? Like the view of Auston is completely changed. I don't think, again, he hides what he is to the public. I think that's pretty clear. I mean, he's a different person around his group, his team, but I don't see him as a captain leader sort of person. Right. Like that's a big personality. We know good captains, just through our experiences, and most of them had pretty big personalities. I would give one example that didn't, and that's Ron Francis, who was an awesome captain. But when Ronnie spoke, like, it was like coming from on high, right? Like it was different. Ronnie didn't need to bang sticks and yell and scream. He didn't need to do that. Tavares is like, I love when people finally notice a guy is, he's not very quick. He's not been very quick since 2009.
That's right.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. He's smart. He knows the game. He's a student of the game. He's always had to play around I'll call it a lack of foot speed. It's like, I always had to play around my lack of height. Like I didn't all of a sudden get short. He's always short. And so like guys get to this league and they already know how to play around their limitations. We all know, like I knew I wasn't Wayne Gretzky or Mark Messier or I don't know, Ron Francis. I knew that. So I had to figure out something else. The Leafs they just seem lost. It's like they just go play.
Yeah.
And that is you're not going to win like that. And pretty clearly they win a few, they lose a few, they win one that they shouldn't, they lose one that they shouldn't. And then they're right back to where they started. And that's kind of what the first half of the season feels like.
We've hit on a lot of negative in these 45 minutes here. So before we wrap, what's the best story that you have seen this year on the positive side, Ray?
Well, put Matthew Schaefer at the top. I got the chance to interview him and talk with him for a minute in New York. And I was like, oh my God, this kid is like just different. Like it's not like some guys you talk to and they're like, they're putting on a performance, and you talk to him for 3 minutes and you're like, oh my God, this is just how he is. When I watch him play, I think of Scott Niedermayer, can go out there and skate forever and has the puck and he loses the puck because he's so great. He just skates back and goes and gets it again. And I remember one time we were playing a game and Pat Flatley said, we're sitting on the bench, and he said something to the effect, oh, that Niedermayer pisses me off. He's not even sweating. And, Flats has got sweat pouring off him like somebody dumped a bucket of water on him. And he's like, he pisses me off. And that's what Schaefer does. I think Macklin Celebrini is a breath of fresh air. I don't think there's a player that reminds me more of Sidney Crosby than Macklin. I think they're cut from the same cloth. I love watching him play. Scored a beautiful goal last night. I love that Connor Bedard has elevated himself to where he's going to be and should be. The guys in Anaheim, like Leo Carlsson, I had no idea he was so big. Yeah. Oh my God, what a player. Seneke he's 19 years old.
Yeah.
Right? Like the positive is these younger guys. It's just thrilling to watch, really it is. And then what Colorado has done is amazing. Like, Nate McKinnon is going to have the MVP wrapped up next Thursday, and he's just, what a season he's already off to. Yep. And if you love hockey, like, how can you not love watching the Avalanche? Yeah. And I would say off the top of my head, those are some of the very best stories. I'm really enthused watching that.
I think the Montreal Canadiens finally becoming a threat is also a good, from my standpoint, is also a good story. Yeah. We need a good Montreal Canadiens team, or at least a competitive Montreal Canadiens team in the league.
Well, we need it in Canada for sure. We need the Blackhawks to be a good team in the States. Like those teams, those original 6 teams, they just add gravitas. to everything they do. And you're right. Like Montreal's youth is starting to bite them a little bit, which I think is probably predictable. They got to figure out the goaltender stuff as Jacob Fowler just gets going in his career, but it's fun to see them play. And we all know that have been to games in Montreal. There's nothing like a Saturday night in the Bell Center. I almost said the Forum, but it's the best. It's like a cultural experience. And I hope if you're a hockey fan, you one day get to go watch a Saturday night in Montreal. You'll love it.
Ray, thanks for doing this. We don't want to we could keep you here for another 2 hours because your insights are great. And you know the league so well. It's astonishing. But then again, that's your job, right? And that's our job.
And you know what, Neil? The best part is it does never feel like work.
Yeah. Right.
For me, the part that feels like work is the travel. Because I don't know if you guys know, Vancouver's a great city, but it's not close to much. So I do spend way too much time on the plane, but I love what I do. I love that my wife loves what I do and supports what I do. We've got, our oldest son, Riley's coming back for Christmas today, from Penn State. And so we're like, we're lucky. We're blessed. And I love doing what I'm doing. And, so we'll do this again in the future, and hope you guys have a fabulous holiday season. Hope everybody's well, everybody around you.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you very much. God bless.
Take care, Neil. Take care, Rick. We'll talk to you guys soon.
And all the best to you and your family in the holiday season, Ray.
Thank you.
Neil, I first met Ray in 2004. That was the last year of the prior ESPN NHL contract. And you could see, even at that time, even though it was a little bit rough around the edges at that particular time, because he was just starting out in the industry, that his opinion, his edginess, that he had all the goods to become a superb analyst. And that's what he has certainly become, not only with ESPN now, but certainly Rogers.
Yeah, and he's unstumpable, meaning that you can't mention a team, a player, a division, a conference that he won't be able to give you an encyclopedic opinion on. And he's really worked at it much the same way as he worked at his game as a player. And he's really come a long way in his craft of being an analyst. He loves doing it, obviously. And if you love what you're doing and you work hard, you'll be good at it. And that's what he is.
Always insightful. And there wasn't a topic that we hit on that I don't think you and I learned something from.
Absolutely. And it was just great. I really enjoyed his insights, his opinions. I learned something from him on all the different topics, and it was one of our best interviews I think we've had.
Usually we save our personnel and injury report for the end of the show, but I think we want to get that out of the way because we have a few fun items at the back end of this. So we're going to start with Kings goaltender Darcy Kemper. He left Monday's game in Dallas with an upper body injury. He is now on IR. Phoenix Copley has been called up to back up Anton Forsberg, who will now be the number one for the immediate future. For the San Jose Sharks, Will Smith out this week. He will be reevaluated on Monday. And Philip Kurashev, another forward, out week to week. Both were hurt in Saturday's overtime win against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And for the Tampa Bay Lightning, the injuries on their back end continue to pile up. Emil Lilleberg, undisclosed injury, out week to week. He was hurt Saturday in the game against the New York Islanders. They're already missing Victor Hedman, their captain, Ryan McDonough, and Eric Chernak.
John Cooper continues to pull rabbits out of his hat, though, and keeps this Tampa Bay Lightning team going. It doesn't seem to matter who gets injured. They're able to keep it going, and he is just shows what a great coach he is, honestly, because when things get tough, you really don't notice it that much with the Lightning. They keep it going. They may not win every game, but they win enough to stay afloat.
For the Florida Panthers, defenseman Gustav Forsling left the game against Tampa on Monday after blocking a shot. But Florida appears to be now starting to get their ship rightened in a 3-1-0 road trip. Now they start 8 out of 9 at home, coming off of that win in Tampa.
Yeah, and again, let's give credit to the coach, Paul Maurice, obviously a very, very experienced coach and doing a great job with Florida, keeping them in the battle while they don't have Tkachuk and Captain Barkov and others, and they just don't seem to miss a beat. They're not the Florida Panthers that we saw win the last 2 Stanley Cups because they're not nearly complete, but they're going to have an adjustment period, though. They're going to have a big adjustment period when those guys all come back. So it won't just be like throw them in and we'll be way better. It'll be throw them in and everybody start adjusting to it. But let's not get there first. Let's talk about how good a job Paul Maurice and his staff do dealing with all these injuries and with all these players missing time. They do a fabulous job.
Good news, bad news for the New Jersey Devils. We'll start with the bad news. Defenseman Simon Nemec, who's played extremely well this season, now on IR after missing both weekend games for the Devils against Anaheim and Vancouver. He is suffering from a lower body injury. However, Brett Pesce will travel with the team and is expected to return to the lineup on Wednesday when the Devils visit Vegas. He has missed the last 24 games with an upper body injury. A few other notes. Alexei Toropchenko, forward for the St. Louis Blues, returned to the lineup in Monday's loss against Nashville. He had been sidelined after suffering a scalding accident at home. Artyom Levchinov, defenseman for the Chicago Blackhawks, scratched for Tuesday's game after Toronto after being late for a team meeting. So looks like this is contagious because the Rangers' Mika Zibanejad was a healthy scratch on Monday for the game against Anaheim and his good friend Chris Kreider.
And that was really a shame. We would love to see them play against each other. And it was great to see Kreider and Trouba come back to Madison Square Garden. They won the game, so they left New York happy. But Zibanejad did not play in that game, supposedly because he was late for a team meeting on a day when they'd had all kinds of snow. So, but who knows? Who knows what they're saying, what they're not saying.
Couple of returns to report on. Marcus Foligno, forward for the Minnesota Wild, activated off IR from a lower body injury. He played in Tuesday's 5-0 win over the Washington Capitals. He had missed the last 9 games. And Rasmus Ristolainen, defenseman for the Philadelphia Flyers, made his season debut in the Flyers' 4-1 win in Montreal on Tuesday. He had tricep surgery last March. So he made his presence felt in the lineup right away, really got under the skin of Ivan Demidov of the Canadiens. So that is certainly a big addition to the Flyers. But conversely, updated news on forward Tyson Foster, who you remember that on December 1st left the ice holding his arm after taking a one-timer against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Originally, the prognosis was 2 to 3 months, but we have learned that he had surgery on Monday, and now that timeline has been extended out to 5 months, effectively mid-May, in a best-case scenario in which the Flyers would probably have to make the conference final at the very least for him to be back in the lineup.
So, and that's very doubtful to happen, of course. But, the NHL, so many injuries and so many tough breaks that you get when the season starts. You don't think about that. Then all of a sudden they start piling on one after the other. It's almost a war of attrition in the National Hockey League to try to keep your guys healthy.
But this was a non-contact injury. And how many guys have you seen go down taking a shot like that where there was just nobody around them?
No, it's obviously a ripped tendon or a ripped muscle, a ripped something that you could do on your own. I mean, all of us that aren't professional athletes know that there's places we stretch to get to or movements we make that really hurt sometimes. So you can imagine when you're trying to swing a hockey stick to shoot a puck at 100 miles an hour, what the chances are of you ripping something if things don't go right.
All right, enough with the injuries. Let's get on to a couple of other items here. And this is something that read about last week, but wanted to hold it for NHL Wraparound. Winnipeg Jets owner Mark Chipman is seeking to consolidate the records from Jets 1.0 and Jets 2.0. The original Jets came in as a WHA team in 1972. They were there till 1979 when club joined the NHL with the Whalers, the Oilers, and the Nordiques. And then franchise moved to Arizona. And of course, that franchise has since relocated to Salt Lake City. But that Mammoth franchise is an expansion franchise. So the records of the original Jets and the Coyotes are dormant for the time being. This iteration of the Jets was born in 1999 as the Atlanta Thrashers, and they relocated to Winnipeg in 2011. But these are two completely different franchises, Neil. This is not the Flames that moved from Atlanta to Calgary. It is not the Stars who started in Minnesota as the North Stars and moved to Dallas. It's not the Nordiques that relocated to Colorado, and it's not the Whalers that relocated to Carolina. Those are all franchise continuations. And this is simply not the case here, where these Jets are two completely different franchises.
Yeah, I would doubt very much that the league will let them consolidate the records because they're just not the same lineage. They don't come from the same background. And so therefore it's a mishmash if you try to do that. I think whether we like it or don't like it, or Mark Chipman or the fans like it or don't like it, they took the same name when they got a new franchise coming back in. They took the old name and put it back on there. But that's simply all it is it's the same name, the Jets, but it's not the Jets of the past. It's like there's a lot of Smiths around, as you know, but we're not all related.
I think one of the things for Chapman also is that there's a statue in front of Canada Life Center of the late Hall of Famer Dale Howardchuk, who never played a game there because his entire career was played in the Winnipeg Arena under the mural of Queen Elizabeth.
Yes, that huge mural of Queen Elizabeth that was hanging in the Winnipeg Arena. Those were great days back then. But you're absolutely right. This isn't the same team. This is a new Winnipeg team, just has the same name.
The NHL may become more colorful as early as next year, and this was something that picked up from an article from our buddy Greg Wyszynski, that the NHL is looking to have more dark-on-dark matchups. And I know what a big uniform guy you are.
And you know that I was the first one to play dark on dark. We did it when Messier came to the Rangers back in 1991 because the league was celebrating its 75th year. And then also in the first game of the year 2000, we played in Montreal, and I asked the Canadians if we could both wear dark. And it was just trying to be a throwback to the era where there was no white jerseys. Everybody wore their team colors, and that was it. And then, of course, TV came into it with black and white TV, and you had to have one team wear white and one team wear dark to be able to differentiate who was who.
So since those games that you had the Rangers wear dark against an opponent that was also wearing dark, we've also seen it in the 2014 Winter Classic between Toronto and Detroit. The Rangers and Red Wings and the Rangers and Blackhawks have done so this year as part of their centennial celebrations. And one game that I think a lot of people are looking forward to is in January 29th, when the Colorado Avalanche will wear the Quebec Nordique jerseys and the Montreal Canadiens will wear red in the Bell Center.
Yeah, that'll be a fun game. You'll see a lot of Nordique jerseys in the stands, and those will be real Nordiques jerseys, not knockoffs like the ones that Colorado will be wearing.
And on the Stadium Series front, Boston and Tampa, both teams will be wearing dark jerseys, although not what they're typically wearing now, but specially designed jerseys, and that will be on February 1st. So upon further study, Neil, about 57% of this year's schedule actually lends itself to the required contrast. So obviously when you have games like the Maple Leafs and the Red Wings, you've got blue and you've got red, and you've got most of the schedule has the required contrast. But I think there are also a couple of things that these games are going to have if they're going to go forward. And I know you don't like the teams that are wearing either a light or a dark jersey, and they're wearing a helmet that's opposite of that.
Well, and it's really not one or the other. There's teams that are now wearing white on the road that wear their dark helmet with that. And I just think that's wrong, because I think that players should be able to quickly, within 100th of a second, a split second, nanosecond, be able to see who's on what team. And that might only be because you catch a glimpse of a helmet. And when you see a guy with a dark helmet, you might not see it as clearly. Just my thoughts. I've always liked the fact that the league ruled that white teams had to wear white helmets, dark teams had to wear their dark helmet, and therefore there was no consideration to the fact that you'd get them mixed up. And it just seems unnatural now when they do that.
And I certainly think that if both teams are going with their dark jerseys, that you're going to see dark helmets for both clubs as well. So everything is uniform. A couple of other things that will be taken into consideration if teams have long road trips that may prevent a dark on dark matchup, because that would require the training staffs to bring extra sets of jerseys along, and also fans with color blindness. And we had seen back in 2015, the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets, the Jets wearing green and the Bills wearing red in that color rush era for the NFL. And so that is certainly something that the league is going to be sensitive to as well.
I would think they have to be cognizant of all these different people that are watching games and different fans with different ways of looking at the game.
Our final note, we had longtime Toronto Maple Leafs radio play-by-play voice Joe Bowen on with us on October the 22nd. And in that, we had pointed out that Joe Bowen night would be coming up. And indeed, that had happened on Tuesday, where it was Holy Mackinaw night, as the team celebrated Bowen's 44 years behind the mic. His first game was in October 1982 against the Chicago Blackhawks. That was the opponent for the Maple Leafs on Tuesday. And as part of the ceremony, where Bowen was very moved, he received a nice video tribute from some of the players whose names he had called over time. He received a golden microphone from former Leaf Wendell Clark. And the radio area in the Forster Hewitt Media Gondola is going to be renamed Bowen's Booth starting in 26-27.
Well, that's great, and that's well-deserved by Joe Bowen. He's been an iconic announcer for the Toronto Maple Leafs for all these years, starting in 1982, and a great guy.
Bowen's son, David, who is the voice for the Sudbury Wolves, called the game, actually, with Joe's partner, Jim Ralph. Bowen enjoyed this game from a private box, but the Leafs, in their comeback win against the Hawks on Tuesday, score goals: Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Auston Matthews, and Dakota Joshua. And after the second goal, the tying goal by Matthews, Bowen's son David said, "Holy Mackinaw."
Yeah. And remember, we found out that that's something that Bowen, who was doing the game, his grandfather was the one who used that expression. And Joe said he had no idea where his dad got it from, but he used to say that around the house, like, "Holy Mackinaw." So it wasn't anything to do with the bridge that connects the upper and lower peninsula of Michigan.
I think he shared with us that his father, meaning Joe Bowen's father and David's grandfather, had said that to stop from cursing.
Yeah, that very well may be. It would be a good thing to do around the house.
Well, congratulations to Joe Bowen, just one of the all-time greats for his honor on Tuesday. And that will wrap up our show for today. Special thanks to Ray Ferraro of ESPN and Sportsnet for joining us.
And thanks to all the listeners. out there. Again, we want to remind you to email us, neil@nhlwraparound.com or vic@nhlwraparound.com. You know that this podcast can be heard on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We need as many subscribers as we can possibly get.
Our website is NHLWraparound.com that has a complete history of all of our podcasts. And in our blog section, Patrick Hoffman's latest is some interesting take on the Mika Zibanejad scratch on Monday, where, as we said earlier, he did not play in the return to Madison Square Garden of his fellow teammate and best friend, Chris Kreider, now with Anaheim Ducks. We also have Neil's Nuggets and Smith's Picks. Short shifts will return on Friday and next Monday. Wraparound comes back next Wednesday, December 24th, where we will look forward to having outstanding photographer Bruce Bennett join us.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.